Aloha, and welcome to the Believer's Journey. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your prayers, for your help in our ministry to promote it, to watch it. I want you to continue to pray for those in Pakistan. There are many people that are without homes, without food or clothing, even clean water. So if you go to our website, you can go to the donate page, and there's an area there you can go and click and read the information. These several Christian homes, about 100 of them were destroyed, as well as a lot of Christian churches, about 20 churches or so. So if you'd like to help out, that's great. Anyway, today, I also want to thank my sponsors, the trade show displays, Guerrero CPA and Law, and as well as Allison and Insurance, Allison and Thompson Insurance. So just want to thank them and for the many people who do give to our ministry. Today, I want to talk about the meaning of lordship in Jesus. What does it mean that Jesus is Lord? What does it mean to say that Jesus is your Lord? What is for Jesus to be Lord of your life? Actually, it means He is the ruler and the master of your whole life. He cannot be Lord only of a part of your life. He's got to be given the total control of your entire life. This is what lordship is. I think that many people don't understand the idea of what a lord is. A lord is somebody who's the master of all, master over things. Okay, it doesn't mean master of all, but Jesus is the master of all. But if you have a lord over a territory, a lord over a country, a lord over a county, or whatever it might be, over a business, they are in charge. They are the master, and everybody who's subject to in that business or territory or country or so forth is subject to them, and whatever they say, they're their master. So I want to share some scriptures because I think, in today's day and age, we think a lot about what's the big thing is, oh, I'm saved, but we don't go further. And there's a lot of teaching in the New Testament about Jesus being Lord and following Him as Lord. In the Old Testament, and we don't have any scriptures from the Old Testament, but God speaks a lot about making Him Lord of your life. It's just a main function. Okay. So I'm going to read some scriptures. We'll talk a little bit about them. Hopefully this won't be too long today. But in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 14, it says, therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. Okay. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things come new. Okay. So if you're in Jesus, if you're in Christ, okay, which means you are born of God. Okay, born again is the term a lot of people use from John chapter 3. But if you're born of God, you are in Christ. You are His. Okay, so now you've become a new creation, a new creature, if you will. Now, the verse says, old things have passed away. What we're talking about is your old lifestyle opposed of God, those things that are not in God, not in Christ. Okay. And it says, behold, all things have become new. So if you're a believer in Jesus and you're a follower of Him, then you need to adhere to this and understand that you become a new creation. You become a new creature. You become something that is totally born again, born anew, which means the old things have gone away. And now you live in a whole new lifestyle. Paul, and many of his writings, talk about, he has a lot of lists about what we shouldn't be doing and what we should be doing, what is of the flesh and what is carnal, what is of the spirit. And those are good lists to read, because I think if you want to believe that you could live in the flesh and ignore growing in Jesus, ignore the fact that you've become new, you're going to find some problems. Even Jesus, we'll talk about in a little bit, even Jesus addresses this very issue. Okay. So in Romans 6, verse 6, it says, knowing this, that Our old man was crucified with him. Okay? That the body of sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin. So I know that a lot of people say that if you become a Christian, that you no longer do any sin, any sinful acts at all, ever. And if you do, then you're not really a Christian. That's a bunch of garbage. That's not true. What it says there, we won't be a slave to sin, that the body of sin is done away with, and that we should no longer be a slave to sin. So, in other words, like when you read in First John, and he says that we come to him that we may not sin, but if we do sin, then we have an advocate. So, in other words, he's recognizing that we are going to sin, we're going to have a problem, but we go to him as an advocate. But also in First John, it teaches that basically that when we do something wrong, we're to take care of it, fix it, turn around. We have him as our advocate, but we don't do it any longer. It doesn't become repetitive over and over and over again. Okay, it's something that stops. And if it's a habit, then we work on it till it eventually does stop. I know in my life, I had things in my life as I was young that were habits, and it didn't go away immediately. It took a little bit of time, but I worked on it. Okay, and I think that's what the scriptures are talking about. We're no longer slaves to sin. Okay, we're a bond servant to Jesus. Okay, we're choosing to be his servant. Okay, and that's what's really, really important there. And then Jesus said in John chapter 14, verse 15, he says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Okay, and even further down, I think around verse 23 or so, it talks again about, abiding in him, loving him, and the Father coming and into him, and they are one. So basically, if you love Jesus, you'll obey his commandments. Okay, I mean, we're talking about, who do you obey? You obey somebody you're a servant to. Okay, children. I mean, you obey your parents. Why? Because they're Lord over you. Once you leave your parents' home, once you leave under their roof, then you are, you're not subject to that any longer. You're subject to other, factors. If you're a guy, you're subject to your wife. I'm sure my wife will love that I said that. But anyway, you are subject in a different area. Okay, if you work for somebody, you're subject to your boss. As long as it's legal, ethical, not against the Bible, you need to follow what they tell you, or else you quit the job and you do something different. In our case, my wife and I, we have a business, and we've decided that Jesus is going to be the basic owner of this business. So everything we do needs to be honoring of him. Why? He's the Lord of our lives. He is the Lord of our business. Okay. So in that factor, Jesus is master, Lord and master over our business, over our lives, over our marriage, over our home, everything we do. Jesus is Lord and master over all of that, our entire life. And I think that's really important. Do we make mistakes? Absolutely. Am I a Bible teacher that makes mistakes? Absolutely. Are there pastors that make mistakes? Absolutely. But we work to keep his commandments. We follow him. There are times in the New Testament, Peter did things that didn't follow exactly what he was supposed to, but still he worked toward it. And I think that's really important to understand that. Then, in what we talked about earlier, Jesus addresses this one issue. In Luke chapter 6, verse 46, Jesus says to the Jews there, but why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do the things which I say? He's telling them basically, don't call me Lord if you don't follow what I say, because then I'm not really your Lord. You're not making me your Lord. You're just have lip service. Okay. How many people go to churches, go to congregations, and then they're real holier than thou on the day they go, then the rest of the week they sin like crazy. And then you have people all around them that watch them and say, I'll never be a Christian. I won't ever go to that church. Why should I be a part of organized religion when all they do is act holy on it to themselves, or on a weekend, but then on the weekdays when they're out in the public and or they're in in with their friends, they're acting sinful. So why do they call them Lord when they don't even follow the commandments? You know, I was talking to somebody the other day about the term worship. We've gotten this whole idea that worshiping God is going to a service and singing songs, and that's not worshiping. That's praising Him in from within, and we're getting ready for a celebration. But worshiping God is giving of yourself to Him totally every single day. You're a gift to the Lord. And as you give of yourself to Him, that is worship. Surrendering yourself, yielding to His will, that's worship. Okay? And we need to understand that. So if you're calling Jesus your Lord, but you won't give of yourself, you won't surrender your life, then Jesus is probably saying to you from back then, why do you call me Lord and don't do the things I say? Very, very important thing to maybe comprehend or to think about. Okay. And then lastly, we have this verse in Romans chapter 10, verse 9. And a lot of people hear this verse at the end of sermons, at the end of a service. I have problems with the way it's presented. I don't have a problem with the verse itself. But it says this: if you confess with your mouth. Now, the word confess there can also mean declare or proclaim. Okay. It's not just I'm saying it with my words, okay, with my mouth. It's saying I proclaim, I declare with my mouth. It's like this conviction of, what I'm saying, I utterly, take in and follow and believe because it's in my gut, it's in my being. Okay. So if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, okay, that's your proclamation, and believe in your heart. Now let's stop there again. So to believe is to act upon with your heart, really means it's within your being, your entire being. So you act with your whole self. Okay, that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. We have this big thing about being saved. Well, I want to tell you, it's not about saying a sinner's prayer and then going on with your life in sin. Okay, it's not about confessing this verse here and living a life of sin and never being made anew, like we said in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. Okay, so we proclaim with our mouth that Jesus is Lord, and we act and follow in our being that God has raised him from the dead. So it's not just a verbal saying, a thinking, an idea that it's happening. It's an active part of your life and lifestyle. Okay, and when you do that, then you will be saved. So what does it mean to make Jesus Lord of your life? To follow him. Okay, like Jesus said, why do you call me Lord and don't do the things I say? In other words, if we follow what he says, if we follow his commandments, like he said in John chapter 14, if we do these things, we're literally making him Lord of our life. Okay, and the whole premise of what a Christian is, a whole premise of what a believer in Jesus is someone who follows his teachings, someone who becomes like him. Okay, this goes back to Judaism. Who was a honest and true Jew from Judaism? Was somebody who followed God, followed the teachings of God to learn to become like him. God said to be holy, for I am holy. So we need to become like him, not to become God, but to become God, like God, in the characteristics that he created us in. I'm going to talk about that next week, or I'm sorry, in 2 weeks. Okay. So we need to become like him. We need to follow his commandments. Okay. We need to live in what he has, become anew, be born of him. Okay. And don't be a slave to sin. Don't be a slave to your old self. Don't be somebody who says, "Oh, I'm saved, and I know that I do all these terrible lifestyle things in life. I know I cheat on my wife. I know I cheat on my employers or cheat on the people I know. I know I steal. I know that I do all these terrible wrong things. I'm a thief and so forth. But God hasn't healed me yet, so I'm okay." Don't go that direction. You're going to wake up someday in the wrong place for eternity, and you want to be careful of that. If you believe, you believe. Believing in him is the crux of the whole matter. What is that? Believing is to follow his teachings. I mean, the word in the Greek is an active verb, pisteo. Okay. So basically, we want to really latch onto that, grab onto that. And once we do that and live that lifestyle, we'll not only understand the meaning mentally, we'll know what the meaning is because we're living the lifestyle that Jesus asked us to live, which is to follow him and abide in him. Okay. So thank you again for joining me. You guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and aloha.